What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of 10 Things I Like here on the SevereMMA YouTube page. I am Spencer Kyte, your friendly neighborhood Spencer man, and we are talking about UFC 282, the final pay-per-view of 2022. It's crazy that we're here already. It's crazy to me that it is December 7th as I am recording this. I get to this point every year where it just feels like, how did we get here? How are we already at December? My wife's birthday is like 8 days away. I don't even have a card yet. I don't know how we're here, but we're here. And we are a few days away from a really entertaining collection of fights slated for T-Mobile Arena on Saturday. Yes, we lost the main event. The new main event is still a quality fight. You can make a case for these two guys being deserving of this opportunity, for Jan Blachowicz and Magomed Ankalaev being deserving of this opportunity. You feel bad for Glover Teixeira, of course. You feel bad and worse for Yuri Prochazka. We hope the champ gets better and gets back sooner rather than later. But I'm still excited to see this new main event, this new fight go 5 rounds in the light heavyweight division. We're going to dive right in because there's a lot to cover. So we will start with item number 1, Magomed Ankalaev getting his opportunity. If you are a frequent viewer of this program or frequent follower of my work from before I landed here at Severe, you know that I am an advocate for athletes not having to win 6, 7, 8, 9 fights in a row before they get championship opportunities, as is the case for Ankalaev. And it would have been had to win 10, if not more, had this situation not played out the way it did. I understand that there are multiple factors that go into deciding these things. There are multiple variables to consider. I think some of what slowed up Ankalaev getting to this point was the year he spent during the pandemic chasing Ion Cutelaba. Sorry, his name escaped me for a minute, but I was just going to say the Hulk, and I know everybody would have understood, but it's that year he spent chasing Ion Cutelaba, right? They had that first fight. Cutelaba sort of goofs around, fakes pantomime, playing possum that he's hurt. Kevin McDonald stops the fight. They tried to make it 2 or 3 times, and for whatever reason, they just continued to keep them together, and they didn't end up fighting again, I think, until like October. And so it just became kind of a gap year for Ankalaev, where he could have booked 1 or 2 more other fights and maybe gotten a little bit further ahead. But he's here now, and it is a 9-fight winning streak. And look, I understand the arguments against him in terms of there's been a bunch of decisions. The TKO against Anthony Smith last time out was as much because Anthony Smith was injured as it was Ankalaev dominating or Ankalaev getting that finish. But he's won 9 straight, man. He's got 1 loss in his career, and it came at the last second against Paul Craig in his promotional debut. This guy is the goods in terms of skills, in terms of talent that he brings to the octagon. He might be the most complete fighter in this division. The one thing he's lacking is true, like, death touch power that Jan Blachowicz has, right? The thing that makes Jan so dangerous in this fight is that he's got that legendary Polish power. He needs to land 1 and then we're done. And that's many of these other guys, right? Yuri Prochazka, same thing. He can land 1 and we're out. Ankalaev doesn't have that kind of power, but he's got a diverse arsenal of strikes. He's got terrific wrestling and grappling. He's got the conditioning. He's got the size, the range, all of those things. And as much as I'm disappointed that we lost the championship rematch, I'm happy he's getting his opportunity because, as I say, and as I said earlier, I don't think you should have to win 9, 10 consecutive fights in order to get these opportunities. Like, if that's what's happening, we're either bringing athletes along too slowly or we're messing around at the top of the division too much and doing too many immediate rematches or quick hustle back of former champions that don't really need to happen, right? To me, I will always advocate for, and Shawnee talks about it all the time, put a couple of fights between the people that just fought for a title and lost. His example is always Justin Gaethje, and it's a good one. But for me, even here, I didn't need to see an immediate rematch. between Glover Teixeira and Yuri Prochazka. I didn't need Jan Blachowicz to fight Alexander Rakic and try to get right back in line. I would have been okay with Jan having to win 2 or 3 fights because he didn't successfully defend the title at all. And he got beat in the second round of that fight with Glover when he lost the belt. And to me, that hampers a guy like Ankalaev. And again, as I said, there are various factors to consider here. There's marketability. There's the highlight reel and the sizzle reel you can put together to sort of sell that fight. There's the results that have happened around it, the other people that have had, great performances or blown up on the scene that we just aren't necessarily factoring in at some points. But like when you win 7, 8, 9 straight at this level, this is supposed to be the reward. When you have that success at this level, at the highest level there is, there has to be a reward, and it can't constantly be getting moved. We're seeing it with Arnold Allen now. We saw it for a number of years with Tony Ferguson. How many people are still to this day sad, mad, frustrated, whatever word you want to use, that Tony Ferguson never fought for the undisputed title? Because whatever happened, right? Shit is always going to happen. Things are always going to come up and go sideways that create situations that delay opportunities for deserving athletes, for athletes that merit those opportunities. I hate the word deserve. Nobody deserves anything. They have earned it. And so Tony Ferguson just constantly got pushed back a little. And if you go through and look at the lightweight division during that stretch, there's not many spots where Tony's being wrongfully skipped. There are other athletes in there that deserve those opportunities, that merit those opportunities, that fit those various other parameters in terms of marketability and the selling of the pay-per-view and the highlight reels and all of those things. But it still sucks if you're a Tony Ferguson fan, and it sucks even more if you're Tony Ferguson himself. And so I get that Ankalaev isn't a Tony Ferguson level popular fighter. He's just not that guy. He doesn't even have, as I said yesterday on One Question, he doesn't even have that quiet charisma and that quiet sort of menacing cockiness of Islam Makhachev. But he's absolutely lights out in the octagon, and he deserves this opportunity. And I know I keep saying deserves. He has earned this opportunity. This should be when he fights for a title. Harry talked about it on the preview show that maybe it's still a little too early. Maybe, but he's won 9 straight fights. So we can't say Arnold Allen has won 9 or 10 or whatever it is now, and it's his turn. It's Ankalaev's turn. I'm happy to see him get it. I look forward to seeing what happens. Next year is going to be interesting at 205. That's the other part of this. Next year is interesting at 205 because the winner of this should most likely fight Glover in the first half of the year. Jamal Hill will be there. Hopefully Yuri Prochazka gets healthy and can come back maybe at the end of the year, if not first quarter of 2024. It's crazy to think about that far down the road. There's some other names that are coming up. Alexander Rakic should be back. Blachowicz is still going to be around. Hopefully we get some good fights. We'll see what happens. Item number 2, Paddy the Baddy gets tested. This is what we've been waiting for. This is what I've been waiting for. So he comes in and he blows out 3 guys that he should blow out. And when I say blow out, I mean, he gets finishes in the second round, but in each of those fights against Luigi Vendramini, against Kazula Vargas, and against Jordan Levitt, there are moments where Paddy gets touched up, where if you're watching closely, you see little mistakes that he doesn't have to pay for in full because the guys he's facing aren't capable of capitalizing on them, or maybe don't even recognize that they've got him, and Paddy is just better. But now he gets Jared Gordon, and Jared Gordon isn't going to let him get away with too many mistakes. This is still very much a Paddy deserves to be the favorite. He is rightfully the favorite in this fight. It is a fight he can and maybe even should win, given that he's 7 years younger, given that he's more dynamic in terms of his skill set, especially in terms of his grappling, where Jared's more of a smash and grab kind of grappler. Paddy is more dynamic and more attacking and more creative with things. But this is the test, man. This is the one that it gets me excited talking about it. It gets me excited thinking about it because this is what we want, right? And for me, as somebody who does not overly care about marketability, doesn't overly care about how popular an athlete is or isn't when it comes to moving up the ladder and getting opportunities, I don't care that everybody loves Paddy and would love to see him in this opportunity. I want to see him tested and I want to see him pass tests like this. I don't want to see him we talked on the preview show and I'm going to spoil it a little bit here. If you haven't watched it yet, we talked about what might be next. And Sean and Harry were saying it's going to be somebody like Clay Guida. And I lost it because like that just can't happen to me. I just don't want to keep seeing this guy spoon-fed opportunities that he should win until he gets to a point where there's no choice but to test him because he's won 5 or 7 or 9 or whatever it is. So I'm happy he's getting this opportunity now. I'm happy this fight is before him this weekend because Jared Gordon is a tough out, right? He's not somebody that anyone thinks of as a world beater. He's 7-4 in the UFC. He's lost to the best guys that he has faced, but he's a tough out. You don't go in there and blow through Jared Gordon unless you're a very good fighter. You don't even actually go in there and beat Jared Gordon unless you're a pretty goddamn good fighter. The only guy that's beaten him in his last 4 is Grant Dawson. That was on short notice. And Grant Dawson is a top 15, top 20 lightweight right now. Really good fighter. We're going to find out on Saturday if Paddy's part of that group. Item 3, Alex Morono gets his flowers. Talked about this a little bit yesterday on One Question, whether Morono could pull a Delize and step in on short notice and beat a guy a little bit ahead of him in the rankings. And while I still don't believe that that's necessarily a apples to apples comparison, a perfect corollary, I do think this is a great opportunity. And I do trust that John Anik and the crew on Saturday will give Alex Morono his due, will give him his recognition, not only for stepping into this fight, but for what he's done to this point. Alex Morono is a guy that when I tell you he's won 4 straight, you're not going to remember that he's won 4 straight, but he has. It's not huge names. It's not great big wins. So they are Donald Cerrone, David Zavada, Mickey Gall, and Matthew Semmelsberger. They're just good wins. They're good victories. He's 8-2 in his last 10. He loses to Chaos Williams and he loses to Anthony Pettis. They go to decision. He gets knocked out by Chaos Williams in very quick fashion. Chaos Williams did Chaos Williams things to him. And then he went the distance with Anthony Pettis, and I believe Showtime's last UFC win. He's a perfect second 15 fighter in this division. And this is a perfect opportunity for us as media, for us as fans, to acknowledge a guy that is just continued honing his skills and finding his lane and playing to his strengths and being the best version of himself every time he steps into the octagon. It's not sexy. There's nothing flashy. There's nothing. Alex Morono doesn't jump off the page at you ever. But you don't go 8-2 in your last 10 fights in the UFC if you're a scrub. You just don't. Matt Semmelsberger catches you. Mickey Gall beats you. Somebody along the way gets the best of you. It hasn't really happened except to better fighters, guys that are a little bit ahead of him in the pecking order. And it's guys like Alex Morono that keep these divisions moving forward, that progress things, that make the whole system work. And we need to take the time when we get the opportunities to recognize them and recognize that. Because the thing that sucks with a lot of these divisions is that once you get people into the rankings, they sit there and go, nope, not fighting. I want this opportunity. And if it's not that opportunity, I'm happy to sit here and hang out on my ranking because I only want to fight ahead of me. And I only want this certain style matchup. Alex Morono just goes back home to Texas, goes back to teaching classes at the Jimmy Owens Gracie Baja in the Woodlands, does his thing, picks up the phone, says yes, and shows up on fight night. That's the kind of guy that deserves all kinds of praise and all kinds of recognition. I hope he gets it this weekend. Item number 4, a potential new contender emerging at middleweight. Look, we've talked for years about Darren Till as this potential contender in the middleweight division. Maybe, but I'm more interested in the guy that's going to be across the cage on Saturday, Dricus du Plessis. Because look, his last fight with Brad Tavares was the first one that went the distance. He's had 19 fights. He's 17-2. One of those losses is Roberto Saldich. The other is Gareth McClellan, who made it to the UFC at one point, sort of a precursor, the guy that really led the way for South African fighters to get to the UFC. Him and Ruan Potts, if I recall from the ECF days. Du Plessis has looked good, man. He's looked very good. He gutted out a performance against Brad Tavares last time out. It was a tough fight. It was a hard fight. He is a powerful dude. He's got some wrestling in his back pocket. He likes to scrap. He likes to get after it. And in a division where, yes, we have a new champion, but at the top of things, it's a lot of sameness, and it's a lot of guys that have already faced each other, right? Robert Whittaker's faced everybody. Jared Cannonier has faced everybody else. Marvin Vettori has faced everybody else. It'd be really nice to inject a guy like du Plessis in there that has some power, that can be a little bit of a chaos agent, and a new name in there to match up with some of these guys down the road, right? We get Cannonier and Strickland next week. The winner of that against the winner of this sounds good to me, because I shouldn't say ideally, that's not fair. But if it's du Plessis and he's facing one of those guys, that's a really interesting opportunity for this guy that hasn't faced those top names to keep matriculating forward. And I know that Darren hasn't fought either of those guys, and so fine, we could do that as well. Those would be good fights as well. But I'm a little bit over Darren Till right now. And if he goes out and looks great on Saturday, I'm back in. I welcome all of the, maybe Darren Till is figuring it out and he's healthy and we're finally going to get the best version of him. I'm going to wait and see until we get that best version and he makes it through 2 or 3 consecutive fights without getting hurt, without having to pull out, anything like that. And look, I'm not criticizing him for it. This is a miserable sport when it comes to preparation. Your body goes through hell. His body has gone through hell many, many times with his knees, with weight cuts, with all kinds of different things. I'm not sitting here going to denigrate him for not making it to fight night. I will say, however, that he's not made it to fight night a lot in the last couple of years. And that's tough. And so you can't bank on it. Du Plessis hasn't missed any fights yet. He's probably missed 1 or 2 because of visa issues during COVID, but I'm not holding that against him. Let's see what happens. Middleweight's interesting. There's a chance for middleweight to get a little bit interesting going into next year. Let's see if we get a new contender on Saturday night. Halfway mark, item 5, an amazing, amazing, amazing fight at featherweight. Bryce Mitchell, Ilia Topuria, as I said yesterday, is my favorite fight on this card. It might be my favorite fight of like the second half of the year. Truthfully, honestly, love this fight. Love these two guys. Love seeing them compete. Love the upside that they bring to the table. Bryce Mitchell has surprised me at every turn. I will be 100% candid in that. He has continued to impress me each time out. Every time I think the bar is set where he's going to top out, where he's going to top out, he moves past it. You go out and beat Edson Barbosa, you go out and have a performance like you did against Barbosa, who we know the quality of, I'm in. And I'm done doubting, I'm done second guessing, I'm done wondering when the other shoe is going to drop, when we're going to see you run into the ceiling. Because that ceiling may be far higher than I project it to be. And Ilia Topuria, man, like that first year, winning 2 fights in 3 months, beating Yusuf Zalal and Damon Jackson, great introduction. Beats Ryan Hall by just doing the thing that everybody should do against Ryan Hall and just being like, I'm not playing your 50-50 game. Fuck off, eat these hammer fists. Nasty. Sorry to everybody that loves Ryan Holland is probably like swearing at me right now on the other side of their screens as I say those things, but it happened. And look, it sucks that he missed weight in January. It would have been a really fun fight with Charles Jourdain. It would have been a great fight if Movsar Evloev didn't get hurt and we could have saw that one, but I'm actually happy that it didn't happen because I want to see them fight down the road because I think they're both top 5 guys. But then for him to go up a division and go up and deal with adversity through the first round against Jai Herbert and then get him out of there a minute into the second, thumping him with power up a division, a big, tall, lanky lightweight, just kind of upped the stock. I remember saying after that fight or during that fight, he belongs at featherweight. That's where he belongs. That's where he should be. Size-wise, stature-wise, that's where he should be. And if he's bringing those skills that can let him do that against a good lightweight in Jai Herbert, sky's the limit for both of these guys. And so Saturday night, they're going to get in there and mix it up. And it can be, the really cool thing about this fight is it can be technical. It can be wild and crazy. It can be on the feet. It can be on the ground. It can be a little bit of everything. And it's going to be amazing. And I absolutely cannot wait. Item 6, the debut of Raul Rosas Jr. Listen, I like prospects. I like undefeated prospects. I like long-term investment. Rosas ticks all of those boxes. Dude is my guy is 18 years old. As Sean tweeted out, I believe it was yesterday, maybe even earlier today, Raul Rosas was like 6 months old when Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz fought for the first time. Or like that happened 6 months before he was born, something along those lines. Like, my guy's young. I think back to when I was 18, I wasn't getting ready to fight in the UFC. I wasn't capable of these types of things. I wasn't mature enough to be in these types of settings. He looked good on Contender Series. Like, didn't look great, but he was 17 at the time. Not that being 18 changes all that much, but he was a 17-year-old that went out there and won a grueling fight, earned his way into this promotion, and gets a fight on Saturday against Jay Perrin. That is a great litmus test. It's a great entry, right? You're not getting thrown into the deep end. You're not getting matched up with somebody that has 30 fights and can just out-savvy you and can just outsmart you. Jay Perrin's not that guy. No offense, Jay Perrin. And the fact that he's got 5.5 years to chase this John Jones thing, right? That every young fighter or so many young fighters come into the UFC talking about. He's got 5 years to do it. June 6th, 2028. That's the date. Yes, I did the fucking math because I'm that much of a nerd. Think about how long away that is. Think about how much room to grow. Think about how much we've seen athletes change in a 5-year span. And now you got an 18-year-old just lump of moldable clay that some coach is going to get a hold of. Most likely. He's going to show up somewhere that's a little bit more established than where he is. He's going to stop being the big fish. He's going to go be a little fish or a medium-sized fish in a much bigger pond with much better coaching. And that's not to knock his guys. That's not to knock the people that got him to where he is. That's just a reality of what tends to happen and should happen. Go maximize your opportunity to become the best version of yourself. Sitting around at home and staying just where you are doesn't give you the best opportunity to chase down that John Jones record. And of all of the young talent that has come in talking about it, he's got the best opportunity because he's got 5.5 years to work. He's got 5.5 years to get there. Even if he took 2 years off and just did skill development, disappeared, right? Went in and did MMA grappling for a year or 2 years and mixed that with boxing and just figured it out that way, he would still have 3.5 years to chase down John Jones's record and only be 20. Really excited for this. Haven't had a long-term prospect like this in quite some time. Sort of touchdown, start at the very back of the UFC, and we get to see all the progression. I absolutely love this shit, and I can't wait to see Rosas on Saturday. Number 7, Edmund Shahbazyan returns. Speaking of former young prospects, still young, still only 25, making his return, taking on Dolce Lungiambula. Very, very winnable fight. Feels a little bit, like a setup. Not a setup in that it's a, one-sided thrown. Lungiambula doesn't have any chance, nothing like that. But just feels like a let's try to get this guy a win. Let's give him every opportunity to get a win is the way to put it, is the correct way to put it. And I'm super interested. Because like the good moments of Edmund Shahbazyan looked really good. The bad moments looked really terrible. And he needed to take this year away to just, put it all behind him, let his body heal, let his brain heal, let his psyche and his mindset heal. He changed camps. He's now at Extreme Couture, leaving Glendale Fighting Club. And like, still only 25. All those things that were good things when he was working his way up and beating Brad Tavares, kicking him in the head to close out his rookie year, those are still there, probably a little bit sharper too. And so the upside remains. This is one of the really interesting things to me about MMA fandom, the way we talk about athletes, the way we talk about prospects, right? When they're on the way up and things are going well, we are all the way in and ready to push them to the hilt, right? When he was beating Brad Tavares, it was get him in there, give him that shot now. And then when he struggles, we turn around and flip it complete 180. And he's a fucking bum. And he's never going to amount to. And he's got all of these holes and all of these flaws. The reality is that Edmund Shahbazyan was a 23-year-old kid that got thrown in there with grown-ass men that had way more experience than him. And then continued to get matched up in tough-ass fights. He lost to Derek Brunson, right? Catches his first loss, takes a beating from Derek Brunson. And instead of getting a reset, he gets Jack Hermanson. And now look, Edmund Shahbazyan is part of this. His management team is part of this. They signed the contracts. They said yes. They chased down those opportunities. They didn't want the step back. To me, I think that's managerial malfeasance. You should be looking at your 23-year-old and being like, hey, man, maybe we just take a step back. Maybe after we just got lumped up, we don't face another top 10 middleweight. We just wait and, face the guy that's 18 even. That didn't happen. Face Jack Hermanson. He gets a victory. That doesn't happen again. And they face Nasruddin Imavov and he beats him up and kicks his ass. And here we are. But like, he's still 25. He's 3-3 in the UFC. The good has been really good. The bad has been really bad. We can really honestly, truthfully call it a wash and start again Saturday against Dolce Lungiambula. Maybe we just have not that we clean the slate, not that we wipe it away, not that we forget about it, but we just say that's chapter 1. That's what happened. Let's learn from those mistakes. Let's learn from those situations and go forward. Because he's still only 25. And the good things that he showed in those early wins and those early performances are still there. Let's give the kid a chance to come back and not decide these people's fates when they're 23, 24, 25. When no champion in the UFC is under 29. We may not even have a champion that's under 30 at the moment. Like, we gotta remember those things. Item 8. Chris Curtis and Joaquin Buckley sure should be fun. Look, I said yesterday that I hate the matchup from a utilization standpoint, right? I would like to see each of these gentlemen fighting someone else separately. Curtis against somebody, Buckley against somebody, because they're each coming off losses against top 15 opponents. And so I just don't see the need in putting them in there against each other to where somebody is leaving Vegas on Sunday morning with 2 straight losses. Middleweight's too thin to do that with talented fighters like this. There's too many guys that aren't capable of facing those top 15 fighters. to saddle one of these guys that could build a little bit again with 2 straight losses. All of that being said, sure am interested in seeing these two get in there for 15 minutes or as long as it takes. Because Joaquin Buckley is a freak athlete, man. He can do crazy stuff. That Impa Kasungane knockout isn't fluke, isn't happenstance. My guy's wild, crazy powerful. Probably should be at welterweight given his size, but is just capable of hanging with, top 20 middleweights because he's that explosive and that powerful. And Chris Curtis is just craft, man. He's got some pop. He's got some crack. He's got a little bit of grit to him, some sandpaper. It's been around forever. And I don't mean that he's that old, but like he's got 30 odd, 40 odd fights, knows his way around the cage. This should be fun, man. They'll be chirping at each other a little bit, I'm sure, because both of these dudes like to chirp. So it should be good times. I'm looking forward to it in that regard. I'm looking forward to seeing these two middleweights get out there and beat the holy heck out of each other. I wish they were beating the holy hell out of somebody else each, respectively. I'll still watch and still enjoy it, though. Item 9. Billy Q is always a good time. Look, I said it last week when Clay Guida was fighting. That one of my 10 things was Clay Guida is fighting, and called it to a T, right? My hero comes on. He comes out singing away, gives us some air drums in the prep point, gets slapped up by his brother, and then goes out and does Clay Guida things. And it's good times. That's what Billy Quarantillo is too, man. Like, again, they don't all have to be bangers. They don't all have to be massive jeopardy, huge ramifications. Sometimes they can just be, this dude brings it, and I want to see him fight. And so this one's got some intrigue to it because Quarantillo is fighting Alexander Hernandez, who's moving down to featherweight, and that's an intriguing point. But like just the fact that Billy Q's back is good times to be. He hasn't fought since last year's MSG show when he fought Shane Burgos, which was a hell of a fight. When he is at his best and his most competitive, they're great fights. Even when he loses, the fight with Burgos was still a competitive fight. The fight with Gavin Tucker that he lost was still a competitive fight. And so this is going to be a good test of where Hernandez fits in this division now that he comes down. But it's also just a Billy Q fight. And I'm always up for Billy Q fights. Good dude, fun guy to watch, perfect preliminary card fighter for a show like this, perfect main card opener for fight nights. Give me more Billy Qs. Last one, upside down. Cameron Saaiman debuts. I mentioned earlier that, Dricus du Plessis, South African guy, getting an opportunity. Cameron Saaiman trains with him. They're on this card. He is coming off his Contender Series win where he looked very good. For a 23-year-old, he doesn't look or fight like a 23-year-old, which to me is the best thing you can say about someone in that position. He's still young. He's still inexperienced. He's got 6 fights. They're all wins, but he doesn't fight like somebody that only has 6 fights and is 23 and should be making, look, he's going to still make mistakes, but he doesn't make those like juvenile mistakes, if that makes sense. I'll try to explain it here. So you see some young fighters, both young in terms of age and young in terms of experience, and they make those little simple mistakes, whether it's in terms of throwing too wide, whether it's bad footwork, whether it's not understanding how to pressure, whether it's IQ problems where they get somebody hurt and they're shooting for a takedown, as Harry loves. Saaiman doesn't do those things. Not that we've seen so far, right? And so look, limited sample size, limited competition, but he hasn't done it to this point, and that's really intriguing. That's really important because it builds a great foundation. And so if you give me a 23-year-old kid who looked good in his Contender Series fight, I covered it, I recapped it. He looked very good in that fight. Dana White, super impressed. This wasn't one of those like, yeah, let's just give everybody a contract. Merited a contract with his performance on Contender Series. And now he's coming into the UFC and he's facing another guy that is in the same position, 6-0, undefeated, relatively young, in Stephen Kozlow. Let's just see. These are the kinds of entries and newcomers I'm interested in. because that foundation, as I said, is really great. It's really interesting to see. He's got a mentor in Dricus du Plessis who can bring him along and show him the ropes. And so there won't necessarily be that shock of being in the UFC and everything being so overwhelming and unfamiliar, because he can get shepherded through. He'll have multiple coaches there this week because the two of them are fighting on the same card. It's a great look. It's a great decision by the UFC to book it this way. And I'm sure Cameron Saaiman's manager, Danny Rubenstein, had not some say in it, but pushed a little and probably pressed a little to have it happen this way. Let these guys fight together. Let's bring the whole team over together so that everybody maximizes. I want to see this fight. This is another, it's the opener. It's another fight, another consecutive week where we get a good opener with a good prospect that I think people should pay attention to, should invest a little time in. And I want to see how he looks, because he looked good on the Contender Series. He looks like somebody that can have a future going forward. And I want to see if that's how it plays out on Saturday at UFC 282. Those are the 10. That's it for the show. Back tomorrow with the Severe Picks and Plays, trying to rebound after a not profitable night last weekend in Orlando. Hope to get back, make some money on the last pay-per-view of the year. As always, go subscribe to the SevereMMA Patreon, severemma.com/pints, the best URL in the business. Go check out the preview show. Ian, Sean, Harry, and myself breaking down this card. Check out everything that is coming out on the platform. I will be back tomorrow, as I said, with the picks and plays, on Saturday with the setup, as well as a live recap as we're going through the event. And then Harry and I on Tuesday with the takeaways, the big show, Sean and Graham in between that, all kinds of good stuff. As always, we thank you as always for checking it out. Go support everybody on Twitter. Follow me at Spencer Kyte. Until the next time, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, know that you're loved, and we'll talk to you soon.